This past week, we read about the beginnings of our people with Abraham, and according to the rabbis, Abraham saw the world as a palace that was doleket. And doleket can mean full of light or full of fire. It can be a world of pain or a world of beauty. And we've invited a couple of rabbis here today to talk about a year of pain and also a year of hope, a year of anguish and enchantment. And each of us are going to speak about a couple of moments that we have experienced this year that have enabled us to feel both of those emotions poignantly and unexpectedly in this most unexpected and painful of years. For me, at least in part, it was being at Harvard all year, which was already painful without any explanation required, and seeing the encampments and seeing a place of higher education turn into a place of vituperation and hatred. But it wasn't the most memorable part of the year. The most memorable part of the year was when I traveled with Julie Platt and other members of the Federation to Israel, met with hostage families, heard the daughter of Ron Benjamin talk about how every time she put food in her mouth, she couldn't eat because she didn't know if her father had food. When she got cold, she couldn't put a blanket on herself because she didn't know if her father was warm. And then on a subsequent trip, sitting next to a friend of mine whose son was serving in Gaza, and he told me that many of his friends have a sign on their door, and the sign says, "Do not knock," because they know what a knock means. It comes from the army, and it's about your child. And you realize not only the pain that people have endured, but the pain that they fear, the anxiety that they anticipate every single day, living in a land where their children are on the front lines. And so we don't only live with the pain of what has happened, but with the fear and anxiety of what might happen, and with the heroism of those who have both endured it and also, at least in spirit, have prevailed over it. So I'm going to ask Rabbi Berman first if he will share with us some moments from his year that he thinks of as particularly poignant and memorable.
Thank you so much, David. It's an honor to be here with you, to be with Sharon, and this august meeting of the leadership of the American Jewish community. It's my distinct honor and to be in the presence of the co-chair of this General Assembly, a Yeshiva University alumnus, Gary Turgo, the past president, one of our trustees, Mark Wolf, who just spoke, and of course our dear friend, Julie Platt, and to be together with partners, truly the leaders who have showed us the way this year. You know, if you ask about the most poignant moment, there's no doubt for me, the most poignant one was on October 7th, and I was in Jerusalem on October 7th with hearing the air raid sirens, and I was standing with my son, who was at the time a senior at Hebrew University in computer science, but he's also a reservist in a combat unit in Givati. And he was told to go get his phone, and he saw that he was called up to service. And I had to send my son off to war, not knowing what will happen to my son. He has been serving in the IDF for over 200 days. He's currently standing on the border of Gaza, and I ask you all to please include him, Yehuda, in your prayers, along with all of our soldiers who are in service of our people. But the moment that I want to share with this community is one perhaps on a note of tremendous partnership and hope. You know, one of the aspects of being president of Yeshiva University is that I get to attend many basketball games. We have a very popular basketball team. Do people know that? Very popular basketball team. Like, I thought I was coming to Yeshiva University. It'd be great academics, they're professionals, they're business, they're rabbis, they're educators. But we have an amazing basketball team, the Yeshiva University Maccabees. They won 50 games in a row at one point, and we're ranked #1 in the country in Division III, #1 in the country. Now, we sing Hatikva before every game along with the Star Spangled Banner, and over this past year, they've been wearing the hostage faces on their warm-up jerseys. We are out in the world as proud Zionists and proud Jews. That is who they are. So there was one game that was deep in Pennsylvania, 4 hours away from New York, that took place on Erev Shabbat on Friday afternoon. And we thought that there wasn't going to be anybody in the arena that would be supporting our team. And we show up to the game, and the place is packed with our fans. And we asked them, where are you from? And they said, we're members of the local Reform Synagogue, and we're here to support our team, Yeshiva University.
Wow.
Pretty good.
And that's when our players realized that we are not playing for a school, we're playing for a people. And that is the sense that I have felt across this country, across the world with the Jewish youth and our adults, across this amazing Am Yisrael, across this mishpacha, that we all feel that we're playing for something larger than ourselves, we're playing for a people. And we are not defined and being cornered by hate, but we are defined because we support each other with love, with a shared mission and a shared purpose. And that's been my experience that's been defining this year.
Ari, I would say that's a slam dunk. Sharon?
That's a very good story. All I can say is that my son commentated the Yeshiva League basketball tournament this past weekend in Los Angeles. So that's my basketball credential, my Yeshiva basketball credential for you. I'm really honored and grateful for the opportunity to be with all of you today and to sit with my two colleagues up on this stage. I'll tell you two moments that I thought of when you asked the question, David. First of all, I was in Israel 2 weeks after October 7th as my niece became bat mitzvah. My family lives in Renana. And it was very painful and very powerful to be there. But the story that I actually want to share happened not 2 weeks after, but actually just about 2 months ago. One of the 6 Chatufim, one of the 6 hostages that was killed in the tunnels, executed along with Hirsch, was Almog Sarosi. Almog, as many of you know by now, was at the Nova Festival with his girlfriend Shachar. She was injured almost immediately when the attack came. And it was said that Almog could have made it out alive, but he stayed with Shachar so that he could be with her, and he was taken into captivity, and he survived nearly a whole year in captivity. And in those terrible days after the hostages were executed and there were funerals all around the country, my brother in Renana went to Almog's funeral. There was not enough room in the tent where the mourners were. There were hundreds of people packed into that tent. But at some point, the mourners in the tent said the words, Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah. And the people who were around them in the tent said, Amen. And then the people who were standing the whole next block away outside of the tent heard the first Amen, and they said, Amen. And then the block behind them heard that Amen, and they said Amen. And my brother, who was about 2.5 or 3 blocks away, just heard this rolling Amen, and he and his family just closed their eyes and said Amen with all their hearts and soul. And when he shared this story with me, when he got home that night, we talked about the incredible power, what it means to be part of a family and part of a people that can show up for each other, strangers like family, as Michal just said, and with our own very presence, hold each other in moments of greatest sorrow and grief. And I share that story because that's what happened in my own community in Los Angeles over the course of the past year. That's what happened at Yeshiva University. That's what's happening in Jewish communities all over the country. People brought their broken hearts and sang together and prayed together and held each other. And there's an incredible power in that. And I first just want to affirm the power of community and what it means for us to be with one another in the dark, not to fix each other, not to make it okay because we can't, but just to grieve together. The second story that I want to share is something that I experienced myself when I just landed in Tel Aviv on July 1st this past summer. And I went and hugged my family, and then I went into an arena in Tel Aviv where there was a confab of all of the peace organizations that operate in Israel, run by Israelis and Palestinians alike. That arena was packed with 6,000 people. Every single seat was full. And one after the next, speakers got up and spoke about their pain, about their broken hearts and their sorrow. There were Israelis who had been in captivity, who thank God had been released. There were Israeli Jews who still had family members who were in captivity, and there were people who had lost their family members who were fighting in Gaza. There were Palestinians who lost many of their family members in Khan Yunis, in Gaza City. There were Palestinians whose family members in the West Bank had been victims of extremist violence in the West Bank. And together, one after the next, they spoke about their broken hearts, and then they said, Hazman higia, the time has come for a different path forward. And I was so moved by the fact that the people who are most proximate to the pain, Israeli Jews and Palestinians and Druze and Bedouin, could stand up and say there has to be a different future. Not yachad lenatseach, together we will be victorious over the other, but yachad letaken, together we can heal. When we honor each other's broken hearts and see each other's humanity, we can collectively build a just future. And for me, as an American Jew, just witnessing the courage that it took for those people to stand there and say those words, I thought, how can we as diaspora Jews not amplify and support and platform and resource those incredibly courageous voices in Israel itself?
So this is a beautiful lead-in to something that I want to ask you both, which is, we're American rabbis. What does this moment mean for the American Jewish community? Because this is where we live, this is our place. Today, as we'll hear in a little bit, is Veterans Day. It's a very American day. So what do we have to say about our own community and the way in which it confronts October 7th?
Well, I think that there are 3 points that I would discuss briefly. One is that there's a great renaissance that's taking place right now. The Jewish soul has been awakened. And we have seen the Jewish people return to their tradition in the most powerful ways. Now, we've seen this at Yeshiva University, where we're bursting at the seams with Jewish students, not just from the day school system, but from the broader community who are seeking a nourishing education that helps them understand their values and their core. And that is, but really all across the community, we're seeing people return to Torah, people return to Jewish tradition to find meaning in their faith. There's a Jewish renaissance that is happening right now. The second is that we have a universal mission, that our goal isn't just for our people. You know, one of the amazing things, I was just walking on our barren campus the other day, and a young woman introduced herself to me and said that she is Iranian. She's studying in our graduate school, and she just came from the University of Tehran, and now she's studying at Yeshiva. Wow. And she's studying biotech.
Is this an exchange program, Tehran? And
It might be a one-way exchange program. But what's incredible is how many people, I was just walking around our halls, we have students from Zimbabwe and India and China and Burma, and we don't hide who we are. We're the flagship Jewish university. We're proudly Zionist. And people are not repelled by our values, they're attracted. 'Attracted' 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 And that if you lean into faith and you lean into our tradition, that doesn't make you then insular, just the opposite. It gives you the roots in order to be forward and to shine and to bloom where everyone prospers. And the third point is that our pattern of Jewish history is that from great destruction comes opportunity. The rabbis teach that the seeds of the redemption are planted in times of darkness. And we have not seen such brutality like October 7th. We have not seen a tidal wave of anti-Semitism triggered throughout the world since the Holocaust. But we've also not seen such historic opportunity, I would argue, forever. That there's an enormous moment right now with the Jewish Renaissance, with the possibility of spreading our values, not just through our people, but to the world. And with the disruption that creates enormous opportunity, my question for the American Jewish community is, does our dreams match this opportunity? Yeah. Are we aspiring high enough? In 1981, Rabbi Norman Lamb sat here, my predecessor's predecessor, at the General Assembly celebrating the 50th anniversary of the General Assembly. I think he said at the time that they raised $1 billion on the 50th year. And he said that the question that I have, he said, was where will we be in 50 years? Will there be another General Assembly in 50 years? Will we do the Jewish education to educate our children and our grandchildren? And now I am sitting here at, I think, like the 94th General Assembly, knowing that there will be a 100th Assembly, and saying this enormous success of the American Jewish community in education. And we should be proud of that, and we should recognize that and affirm that. And understand that our goal, though, isn't just continuity. Our goal is destiny. And the Jewish destiny is to take our values, embody them, live them, embrace them, and bring them out into the world. And we have enormous possibility to do that today. And my hope and aspiration for this General Assembly, as we think about for the next 50 years, it's not just about doing Jewish education and what kind of education, the ones that aspire and enable us to achieve our ultimate destiny.
I really agree with you that our goal as a people cannot just be to survive. We will survive this. We're survivors. We've survived terrible, terrible chapters in history. The question is, who will we be on the other side of this? And I really believe that this is a critical moment for our Jewish community to get very clear about who we are, about how seriously we take our own Torah, that every single human is created b'tselem Elohim, not just Jews, but every single human. How seriously we take Jewish history and what it means to have been the stranger for thousands of years, the oppressed, the persecuted, the beleaguered, the ones that nobody fought for. And can we put together our Torah and our history and articulate a set of core values that help us lead with our humanity, that help that light shine in a way that not only shines on our own people, but actually on all people. I was so moved this past year to read Rabbi Shai Held's new book. Many of you read it, I'm sure. Judaism is about love. And he talks about all of the ways that we've been raised to think that Christianity is about love and Judaism is about action, right? But actually Judaism is about love. And we look at Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, which really is a call for us to love each other, even to love those who are across the aisle, to love those who have different politics, to love those who, look at the last Tuesday night very differently than we do, to love each other because we're family. But we're not only called to love our Jewish family. It also says in Devarim, it says, V'ahavtam et hager, right? We're called to love the stranger. And the stranger is defined as whoever is suffering the most in that moment. And frankly, that means to actually try to love and to see the humanity of and embrace the humanity of the Palestinian people, even in this moment. Can we do both? Can we do both? We are living in a moment in which So many of us, including me, are absolutely devastated. My kid is on a college campus that is really at the epicenter. It has been an incredibly painful journey. I am so heartbroken by how binary this discourse is. You're pro this, you're anti that. Which team are you on? Which flag are you flying? Can we fly the flag of humanity? Can we say as Jews that we are called to love all humanity, our Jewish family, our Israeli family, and also to love anybody who's suffering? Anybody, any innocent person is created in the image of God. Can our hearts not understand what a moral catastrophe it is when any innocent person dies? And I believe that if the people in this room don't all agree with that message, maybe your kids do, or your grandkids do. They're seeing things differently. There is a generational battle that's happening right now because so many young people feel like they're attuned to a reality that their parents and grandparents just can't see. I believe that our hearts are capacious enough to hold it all, that we don't abandon our own family, we don't abandon Israel when we come to see that there is the possibility of a just future. I believe that if we don't acknowledge that reality, then we cannot fight anti-Semitism, then we cannot fight for Israel. We have to have a more holistic, more open-hearted understanding of the humanity of all of the people who are involved here so that we can actually build a just future for everyone.
My own experience has been actually that the two beautiful testimonies that you just heard are really one. Because when you speak Jewish, you speak to the world. When the United Nations, which is in theory the most universal institution in the world, wants to express itself, what does it put on the front of the building? Lo yisa goy el goy cherev, lo yilmedu od milchama. It speaks in a Hebrew accent, which is what the poet Heine said, that freedom speaks in a Hebrew accent. When I grew up in Philadelphia and you would visit the Liberty Bell, there was a verse from Leviticus on the Liberty Bell, proclaim liberty throughout the land. And Cynthia Ozick has a beautiful metaphor for this. She says, look at the shofar, it has a narrow end and a broad end. If you start off blowing in the broad end, you get nothing. But if you start off blowing in the narrow end, you get a sound that everyone can hear. And it is certainly true that the values of the Torah should be universal values. It is also true that for the American Jewish community, we are in a struggle that is, for most of us, somewhat new. I remember on October 8th, when I went to Harvard Hillel to be with the students, and I was approached by a woman who had been a soldier with the IDF before she came to Harvard, and she said to me, I'm scared to go back to my dorm. And she showed me the messages on the Slack channel that she had received that were terrifying. And I realized that it was a different moment from other moments we had known. And yet, it is really important for all of us to recall that we've been around too long to be hysterical, and we are also too wise to be naive. This is not a new battle, but there are also elements of it that are new. And so, some of you know this story. A few months ago, now it was actually more than a few, in December, I was at this convention in Florida with 4,000 Jewish teens, BBYO. And I was, yeah, go ahead. You should absolutely applaud for BBYO. So I was on a panel with 3 other people, and the last question was, what gives you hope? And I was going to say 4,000 Jewish teens. Unfortunately, I was 4th on the panel. So by the time they got to me, everybody had said 4,000 Jewish teens. And I had this sudden, almost flash of revelation. I said, you know what gives me hope? I'm talking to my great-great-great-great-grandfather. And I say to him, you know, there's anti-Semitism at Harvard. And he says to me, there are Jews at Harvard? And I say, yeah, but they hate Israel. And he goes, there's an Israel? And I realized that our historical situation enables what we are saying. That is, we are strong enough to also be compassionate, and we are also strong enough to strengthen ourselves in the Jewish values that not only have brought us to this point, but that have enabled such leaders who can speak in such beautiful ways to suffering, to aspiration, to hope, to solidarity, to all the values that I know every single person in this room cherishes, or you wouldn't be in this room. So, I got some pretty firm marching orders, so we need a closing message from each of you there's no way to sum up all of this, but these are, in all sorts of different ways, the leaders and those who care most about the Jewish future in our country. So what have you to say to them? Is it okay, Sharon, if I start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to share with you a very short story, which is we took a trip with our community Ikar to Central Europe a couple of summers ago, and we visited Kosice, which is a town in Slovakia, because one of the people who organized it from our community, her family was from Kosice. And there used to be 12,000 Jews in Kosice. It was 1 in 5 people in the town. It was a very Jewish town. Almost all of them were murdered in Auschwitz. When they rounded up the Jews, they brought them into the big synagogue in the center of town, and they stayed there for many, many days while they awaited deportation. And since almost everybody was killed, the synagogue essentially sat like it was the day the last Jew was dragged out of there for 60 years. Until one day, someone went in and started to clean it up and think that they maybe would do a little bit of renovation. And when they did, they actually started to pull some of these wooden pews off the walls. When they pulled the wooden pews off the walls, they saw behind the wall a miracle. They saw behind the pew on the wall these pencil scrawlings where the Jews who had been forced to wait in that place for days, knowing that they were likely heading to their death, scrawled saying, "It is 1944. We don't know where they are taking us. We need you to know that we were here." We came a couple of years later and we saw those scrawlings. And I was so struck by the incredible act of faith that these Jews awaiting their death believed that one day there would be Jews left in the world. And those Jews might come back to this place, and those Jews might pick up their dream and actually find meaning in their lives and their deaths. This is a moment of political earthquake in this country, just as it is in Israel. And I believe that our dreams matter profoundly. And the message I gave my community after the election was, we share our dreams, we live our values, even if we cannot see them manifest immediately. We scrawl them with pencils on the walls that will be covered with wooden pews, because we know and trust as a Jewish people that one day someone will find those messages and will carry on our dreams for this country, for the state of Israel, and for the future of humankind. And I think that that is absolutely the very best way that we can respond to the challenges of extremism and human cruelty and callousness that we're fighting today, to keep holding on to our dreams, because, my God, we desperately need them.
Thank you.
I feel blessed to be in your presences, to be here at this assembly. What gives me hope, David, is, of course, the next generation. It's, of course, the fact that we're building on the incredible, secure roots of our fathers, our mothers, our grandparents, great-grandparents. And I will also say, what gives me hope is that I know that we have allies. After October 7th, when I saw what the presidents of some universities were unable to do, I started a coalition of university presidents who were able to sign on to the statement that we stand with Israel, with the Palestinians who suffer under Hamas's cruel rule in Gaza, and with all people of moral conscience. We had over 100 university presidents who signed. It was major public and private universities, faith-based universities, and historically black colleges and universities. One of my first calls was to a dear friend of mine, Rochelle Ford, president at the time of Dillard University. She spoke at the Washington rally last year based on this this leadership of the coalition. And she said to me, when she heard how sad my voice was after October 7th, she said to me, "Ari, the Jewish people win when Moses holds his hands up. But who holds Moses' hands up? It's Aaron and her. Let us be your Aaron and Hur. You can lean on us.
Wow.
And what I found consistently is that when we speak with moral clarity, like in this case, calling out clearly that Hamas's massacres are evil, and that we can't accept brutality, and that rape and murder and burning children alive is something that all people of moral conscience, whatever seat you sit in a university, should be able to say. That when we speak with moral clarity, other people stand with us. That when we stand with conviction for our values, other people stand with us. They respect it, they see the conviction, and they stand with us. There is enormous opportunity today, enormous. And it's not just about Jewish education, Jewish continuity, it's about Jewish destiny. And all of us need to be aligned to that purpose, to inhabit ourselves, our strengths, our values, and bring out our mission to our people and out into the world.
Thank you. So I want to close by telling you a story that I tell now at every opportunity, because I think in some ways it is the story of the Jewish people, and it's a very old one. You know, we don't talk about the afterlife as much as some other traditions, although there is more talk about the afterlife than most Jews think. But there is a very good old word for hell in the Jewish tradition, and that word is Gehenna. What you might not know is that Gehenna is a real place. There is a valley outside the walls of Jerusalem called the Valley of Hinnom. And there, a little more than 50 years ago, some Israeli archaeologists were excavating in the Valley of Hinnom in Gehenna. And excavating there, they came upon the oldest bit of Torah that exists in the world. 2 rolled up silver amulets. You can still see them if you go to the Israel Museum. And when they finally unrolled these amulets and they found this oldest bit of Torah that exists in the world, this is what it said. Yevarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. Yair Hashem panav elecha v'yichuneka. Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God bless you and keep you. May God's countenance shine upon you and be gracious to you. May God be with you and give you peace. What that means is the oldest bit of Torah, more than 600 years older than the Dead Sea Scrolls, that we have in this world from the destruction of the first temple out of the midst of destruction, is a blessing of peace that was snatched from hell. That's who we are. That's what we have done again and again and again in our history. And I have no doubt that we will do it again, as you have already seen people doing it in process here on this very stage, people who have been through hell and yet have managed to find blessing. As long as we continue to be true to that legacy, to that tradition, to that Torah, as long as we continue to produce leaders like these rabbis, we will, in fact, bring the world a blessing of peace. Thank you.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Sean. That was great.